All right, guys, welcome to my Monday morning rant. I wanted to bring up the topic of racism this morning. Heavy topic, I'm a Morgan Freeman fan, and he suggests that the only way to get rid of racism is to stop talking about it. Interesting. I kind of disagree with that. I like talking through shit, so here we go. I have two comments from complete opposite ends of the spectrum. One is against me having an Asian appearance and having an Australian accent and sort of masquerading as an Australian. This guy goes on to say that there's a radical right-wing movement of it, basically the very first European settlers into the country being really upset that people of Asian heritage or any other non-white race happily representing being Australian, and these guys are really cracking down on us. Man, I couldn't even put that in words because it's just not worth it. And on the opposite end of that, I have a Chinese guy hammering me for suggesting that I wasn't proud of being Chinese, which I alluded to a little bit in the Rosamina Bold podcast. I suggested that, when I was growing up, I wasn't proud of being Chinese. And even today, the Chinese people, or there's things in Chinese culture that I'm not particularly proud of. And look, even with that guy, I don't even know what to say except, sometimes I'm not even proud of being a human being, let alone Chinese or Australian or whatever you want to call me. So, context is important, and being born in 75 and being in social media where there's a whole lot of people that are younger than me listening to my stuff, I figure I'd take this opportunity to talk about racism, the way I see it and the way I saw it, especially growing up, in the 80s in Sydney, Australia. My first memories of racism might have been in primary school. It would have been year 2 or 3 or something like that. I was tiny. I remember Dad picking me up from school, and I had a bleeding, bruised up lip, and he demanded to know what was wrong, like what happened. And truth was that this white kid threw a matchbox car at my face and hit me in the mouth and, split my lip. And I didn't think it was a big deal, but Dad did, and had a good word with the teachers and stuff. And I think that was my first sort of introduction into it. A few years later, still in primary, a couple of white kids pushed me into the toilet block, and my left eyebrow hit the corner of the toilet block, brick building, and I scored stitches. So an ambulance came to school, and it was all really, really dramatic, I still didn't even know it was racism, but that's what it was. Not even high school, before high school. So year 4, year 5, Marsland College, man, every single day, not a single day went past where I wasn't slapped in the head. And I was one of the few Asian people in the entire school. I think maybe 3 of us in our year. And I was called slaphead or whatever. Every single day I was slapped in the back of the head with force as well. And I just took it as normal because I was different, I suppose. And I just copped it every day. It wasn't until I actually told my parents about it one night that it was just upsetting me so bad, but I was so scared to tell him. It took me years to tell him. I finally told him that this one kid especially was just hammering me every day. And he got a good wording too, I suppose, by school teacher or whatever, and he never did it again. So that taught me something, like speak up about it rather than just cop it, High school was even crazier. I wasn't just called slaphead there. I was called something different every day. Noodle, chink, China. I was very rarely called Justin. And those guys would rumble you too. Like, I'm talking about everyone in the school ground rumbling one individual. And I got rumbled a lot. I don't know, man. Racism was so fucking hard. You know, like I remember coming home from school, and I lived in the eastern suburbs, which is pretty, you know, pretty jazzy now, right? But back then, eastern suburbs wasn't as, you know, freaking hipster and yuppieville as it is now. And I'm talking about Kensington, Anzac Parade. So Sydney Boys High School, quick bus ride to Anzac Parade, Kensington, and as soon as I hopped off the bus, there was Asians out spray painted on the wall, as tall as I was. I mean, you know, we're talking about a huge fucking Asians out exclamation mark spray painted just across the road from the post office at the bus stop. It's just the kind of shit that we dealt with, you know. And I think the pressure only alleviated when maybe the riots happened at Brighton Lissans, and you know, like as a bunch of Asian boys being pulled over by cops in cars, generally speaking, your upbringing's being good enough for you to talk to cops in a polite way. Yes, officer. What's up, officer? But I know that the Middle Eastern kids and Lebanese kids were just giving cops so much attitude during those times, calling them pigs and singing Old MacDonald had a farm and kind of stuff like that. And then, you know, I suppose the guys took it further. They took it further when a few of them were burning Australian flags during the riots. And man, it just seemed like all attention was off Asians after that. I don't know, but that's how I feel about it. So it's interesting, you know, years later, I think whilst there isn't Asians out spray painted everywhere, I still think racism is rampant. And with social media being the way it is, it's almost like it's coming back in a big way. Having said that, I don't mean to be an instigator of racism and talking about it. I don't think talking about it is necessarily a bad thing, but it's probably always going to come up in conversation. And you know, I don't know how I feel about the topic. You know, I don't know if it's almost like I don't even know if I'm Australian, or I don't want to have to second guess myself whether I'm Australian or Chinese or what. I just know that I like to take good bits from various cultures and make it my own, and I'll probably continue to keep doing stuff like that. But you know, just in hindsight, it's been interesting. A lot more of these hateful comments come from younger people, and you know, having a young guy like Lachlan on the last podcast might not be such a great idea in retrospect, because you know, a distance is growing between myself and a younger audience, and that's undeniable. And my patience for younger people is growing thinner by the day, and it's interesting, you know, to see that there were memes created about that last podcast. It's interesting to see Lachlan's mates on his own Facebook page paying him out about stuff, and you know, you could look at that stuff as terms of endearment or what have you, but I just straight out read it as people taking pot shots at each other. There's a whole lot of truth in the negative comments. I just see it as negative and hateful and mostly unnecessary. You know, I know there's a time and place for it. Young kids go through that. But like I said before, like 20 isn't exactly super young to me. I know I did a shitload more than most 20-year-olds I know. By that age, you know, I was speaking in front of thousands of people, and I was in magazines every month, and I was pushing hard to get my career in place, you know, and you could say it's because I had a lack of distractions without social media, but, you know, I'm pretty sure previous generations always say that they had it easier or harder or what have you. It's not something that I can really comment on. But, you know, I just feel really sorry for 20-year-olds today, if that's the case, and if it's like everything's a shit fight and a shit storm and it's all a big joke. You know, I hate to say that they've got no hope, but I've heard it so many times from so many people that, man, these kids have just got no hope these days. And I would love that to not be the case, because I hope that 20-year-olds that will grow up into people that will inspire me later on and lead me down the track, you know? I'm sure there are still shining stars, but like I said, I still thought Lockie was a really mature guy for his age on the podcast, and some part of me wonders whether it was all an act and whether behind closed doors he's just like every other 20-year-old in front of his mates. All I do wish for is that these guys wake up. Practically. I mean, when you're young, you've just got so much fucking energy, and it's such a shame to see people using the energy in wasteful ways. Anyway, I think I'm gonna end my rant there. I could go on about racism for days, man. But these one-on-one sort of me and the camera doesn't really work for me so well. I've said that since the start. So these Monday morning rants might not even be a thing. Sooner or later, I'm just going to have guests on, and I work better that way. I much prefer bouncing off people than I do talking to a fucking lens. So on that note, I've got Catalina Briceno on the show this week. I'm really excited about it. She's an amazing woman, and she's a very opinionated person too. So I'm hoping she can forget the cameras and microphones and hope that we can just have a good catch up, to be honest. So look out for that at the end of the week, or maybe even the weekend. Enjoy your week, guys. Till next time, it's bye for now.